Hey, what's up? I'm here with Sarah Slean. Sarah, how you doing?
I'm great, thank you.
Thanks for coming in today.
My pleasure.
So you have a crazy album coming out, Land and Sea. You've been in the music biz for so long, and why did you decide to do a double album? Because I'd imagine, for a musician, it's probably like a big decision.
Yeah, and in this day and age, it is a crazy decision.
Yeah.
You've used the perfect word. Um, I don't, what can you do when the muse visits you and the ideas are born that way? You have to obey. And that's what we do as artists. We follow the muse. And if you have the courage to do so, all kinds of resources come your way that you didn't know where they would be, and you just kind of crossed your fingers and hoped. But if you believe, they just come, it's if you build it. That's right.
Nice. Kevin Costner. Great movie. Great movie.
Really good
I really love that movie.
Love it too.
Let's talk baseball. No.
Sure.
Obviously there's the two sides. So there's Land and Sea, and one is a pretty poppy, sort of indie rock record, and the other one's just like classical, really epic, but gentle at the same time side. So did you have all this stuff floating around already? And did you have enough to do a double album, or was it like super daunting and you were like, how am I going to pull this off and write all this stuff?
Well, when I start writing for a record, we have seasons as recording artists, and you tour and then you slow down, and then you start writing, and then as you start writing and the thing starts getting born, then you record, and then it's put out, and you tour, and you go back around and around, right? Yeah. And when I was in the writing stage, all of this stuff was coming out, and as it does, and you sort of organize, or you say, oh, these are all kind of like, they belong together, and then an album sort of takes shape. It's very organic, right? Yeah. But this time they were sort of filing into two separate families, and I couldn't really choose between the two. I loved these. I couldn't wait to play these on stage. The Land songs are like, yeah, I'll get the mic and leave the piano behind and act like a tool on stage. I can't wait to do that. But then there were the other ones that were really interior and philosophical and idea-based and really actually quite spiritual lyrically. And I didn't want to deny them, but I also didn't want to try and mash them together, as I've done before in my career, orchestral and pop, and try to make a sort of strange hybrid out of them. So I said, why not give them each their own platform? Yeah. And that's how it was born.
So, talk about some of the themes, because the first song on Land is Life, and that sort of goes through both sides, right?
Right. Exactly. You're paying attention. Land starts there, and I feel like that's where all art begins. Wonder. When you're looking in the mirror and suddenly you're strange to yourself, or you're like, God, look at this marvelous machine that I inhabit. Yeah. And my lungs and my heart and my liver and all these things are happening, and I have really nothing to do with it. It's an incredible thing when you really internalize that, and the idea of life on Earth and the idea of Earth. These things, when you really ingest them, are shocking and marvelous and worthy of our deepest awe, right? So that is where I think my art comes from every time. And Land, I think the ideas behind those songs begin there, but they're about being physical in the temporal world, being a certain personality, your name, the clothes you wear, where you live, the little dramas you get involved in, your career, your dreams, but really in the world. And Sea is about that eternal thing inside of you, the life that is you, but you are not part of. And the intelligence inside you, the intelligence of this whole organism we call Earth and the human race. And when we have this astounding ability to think about that with our small brains that are sort of trapped inside personalities, we have this ability to contemplate the infinite and the marvelous, and to think about outer space, and to think about where we will be when we die, and all of these things, right? So that's what the focus of Sea is. And they complement each other, I think, beautifully. And they reveal themselves in the aesthetic of the music. Land is like a four-piece rock band, some horns, it's gritty, it sounds like people playing in a room together. I'm belting it on some of these songs. And Sea feels like the vast quantum soup if you will. Yeah. You know, it feels that way to me. It pitches and rolls, and we didn't record it to click at all. So it was recorded completely organically, live, off the floor, with a 21-piece orchestra.
Which is insane. Like, you did this in 2 days? That's insane.
Can you imagine?
No, I have no idea.
Can you imagine? I had worked on these songs, and the songs were born, but then I was determined to have them done with a 21-piece orchestra, so I worked on those arrangements. And I wrote 4 of these arrangements, then it took me a long time, because it's the first music I've written for an ensemble of that size. Yeah. So it was, you know, I'd go back to the drawing board numerous times, but all of this time and all of this effort, and your whole soul poured into these pieces of music, and then you have 12 hours a day, 2 days, essentially 24 hours, to make them happen. So the pressure was intense. And the first day was essentially a rehearsal. And I'm so glad we had that first day, because the first day I was a complete mess and couldn't really sing. I was so nervous and wanting the orchestra to get it right and feel relaxed. But then the next day, it just flowed. It just flowed as if it had wanted to be, and it was going to be. And it had this volition of its own.
Well, I was reading the press release, and you did, you pulled an all-nighter in between those 2 days? What are you doing?
What are you doing? First day in rehearsal, one of my arrangements just wasn't working. And, you know, my co-producer looked at me and said, this is what happens. There are casualties. It's fine. Leave it. The other 6 are going to be amazing. And I said, are you crazy, man? Like, when am I going to have 21 incredible classical players in the room together recording my songs? I'm rewriting this tonight. I went home and rewrote it and crossed my fingers, and the arrangement worked out great.
I mean, that song ended up being sort of one of your favorites that you wrote too, right? Mm-hmm. And I don't know. I know that you did some. I'm not too sure. It was the mixing or some of the arrangements you did out east on, I guess on cliffs with whales swimming by, and I mean, you can hear it on that song. I feel like. Right on. Yeah, I don't know. Did you work on that song there, or?
I did, in fact. Okay, very perceptive too. Lock up your daughters. Yes, I did, and it was in my favorite part of Eastern Canada, where literally you open your front door and you take 10 steps, and there are the cliffs and the crashing surf. Yeah, it was very inspiring.
What was it like to work with Joel?
Incredible.
Yeah.
Joel I love the way the universe works. You have a desire to make this music, and you don't know what the missing piece is, and then you turn around and there is the missing piece. And I had known of him for years and sort of, you know, casually admired his songwriting, didn't really know very much about him. And I have people that I work with in the business side who are like, Joel Plaskett is amazing, and you guys should do something together. And I'd be like, whatever. You know, and then it just kind of the stars aligned. And when we work together, what I love about him is that he works fast, and he's enthusiastic, and he never slows down, and he won't give you time to start thinking about things. He wants you to play. He wants the band to play together. Yeah. And things get born that way, as opposed to sitting down and trying to use one's reason, which I, you know, being a sort of semi-intellectual, I like to try to do that. I like to isolate variables. I like to have a plan.
You think a lot.
I think a lot. And Joel's like, no, let's play. You know, he's got limbs that are extremely long, and
it's your Joel Plaskett impersonation.
That was it right there. I thought it was pretty good.
Yeah, that was good. Mm-hmm. Well, and what did that do for you? You know what I mean? What did it do for the songs?
Exactly what I'm describing. It doesn't allow the brain to sort of get into a gear and become rigid. It's fluid, and you know, sometimes that approach doesn't work. You can try to throw these things together and do it again and again and again, and you won't get it, and you just have to accept that. But thankfully, you know, the angels visited us on a few of them. I was worried, and if you watch some of the making of videos, there are times where I'm like, Joel, can we move on now? You know, like, clock's ticking, money is draining, you know, and he'd be like, we have to get this, you know, like, I feel it is coming, and I would have to trust him.
You mentioned, you know, that it is a spiritual record, and, you know, you have a song like Amen. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I just wondered if you were a spiritual person. You know, are you a religious person?
I'm not a religious person.
You're still spiritual?
Yeah, and I mean, God, like even both of those distinctions now have become sort of obsolete, or not obsolete, just meaningless, because they've been so abused, I think. But I have no real, I don't practice any religion, and I find them all sort of strangely fighting over details about which something that is essentially the same story, right? Yeah. And they're all fighting over the details of the name of the protagonist, you know, which is like, it's a metaphor, people, you know. But the metaphor to me is so inexhaustibly rich. It's so rich that, like, for instance, Christ consciousness, or the idea of a prophet, the idea of the divine spark within a human being. To me, we felt that before. When we have those moments in front of the mirror and we are startled at our own existence, or, you know, when you're looking in the eyes of someone you love so dearly, or in the eyes of your grandparents and you see their entire life there. You know, like, we all have these moments. We all can see past the veil sometimes, because this is what it is. These are veils. The physical world and the body we come into, these to me are veils that, through the sort of the contrast they provide, through the seemingly finite nature of them, that's like the jumping off point where we can see the infinite, where we can make contact with the infinite, where we can sense the divine. You have to know what cold is to have any perception of hot, right? Yeah. And I feel like that's the same with physical finite beings in the physical world. We are here in this strange, incredible environment where there is living and dying and ebbing and flowing. And through the constraints of time and space, we can sense the eternal.
New set of eyes. Is that what that's kind of about? Yeah.
Precisely. I love it when people listen to the lyrics.
Well, I just love that idea. I mean, it's like everybody's kind of connected ultimately, right? I mean, you could be having a shitty day, and pardon my French, and, you know, somebody else is probably having a worse day somewhere.
Mm-hmm. Precisely. And there's this thing that we see in each other's eyes, you know? Like, I can look in your eyes right now and sense a universe in there, a universe of a history, the universe of your genetic information. Like, there's a veritable infinite universe in your eyes.
You should be a member of the X-Men.
Did you know that I can fly? No, it's true. And like I said, that is inexhaustibly rich for me. I could write music about that until the day I die.
How much of that, you know, comes from traveling and meeting people everywhere?
Incredibly.
I mean, how do you do it? How do you maintain relationships and stuff like that?
Well, this is the thing. Ebbing and flowing is part of the nature of what we are. And people come in and out of your life, and I accept that now. You know, I think anytime you try to cling, this is a, you know, very strong vein in Buddhist scripture. The clinging is when life slows to a halt and shrivels and dies. Yeah. But with the flow, right, the ebbing and the flowing, which I talk about in Cosmic Ballet, ebbing and flowing of an ancient ocean, the Cosmic Ballet. When there's ebb and flow and movement and releasing, non-attachment, that's when the energy, the spirit of life is flowing freely.
Is there a Celtic vibe on sea? Is there anything going on? Okay, good. Actually. I thought so.
Yeah, interesting you picked that up. In The One True Love, there's a line that is very much Celtic, and the classical orchestra were kind of like, how do we play this? And it was all very neat.
Part, yeah, totally.
Neat, and I was like, no, you're at the village feast, and Rob Roy has just brought home the enemy's head. You know, trying to like give them that image, and you know, like people are playing bagpipes and things.
Start jigging.
Exactly, exactly.
And I guess you just announced a tour. Mm-hmm. So what's the plans? November is Canada tour time.
Yes.
And then I guess after that, more touring? Are you going to the States? Or
I may be going to the States because we have lots of friends there from my earlier times. I toured a lot on the Northeast and in LA and stuff. I will likely go back there next year. And I'm also exploring a lot of really interesting opportunities to perform C, because I can't really hire 21 people and throw them on a bus and tour that. So the tour in November will be mostly land with my amazing band. And next year we're working with a lot of Canadian orchestras and doing really interesting things in their world, in their milieu. So I'll go to, say, Halifax and work with Symphony Nova Scotia, and we're going to perform C. And Christos Hatsis, who's a very renowned Canadian composer, he and I are going to be working together. All kinds of weird things are being spawned from this recording, and it's, you know, if you build it.
It will come, or he will come?
They will come.
They will come. That's right. Thank you, Kevin Costner. Thanks, Sarah. Best of luck with the tour and with the album. Have fun with it.
I will. Thanks so much. Cool.